this week we have Todd Primm. How are you?
Hey.
Colleague of mine, a microbiologist here at SAM. And never have taken that course because I already washed my hands plenty. And I know if I took that course, I'd probably be OCD on the hand washing.
You'd be David, essentially.
Yeah,
David's probably the most,
I get
germaphobe person I know.
it would scare me to death. Also director of Crew here on campus, and PACE, which is a Professional and Academic Center for Excellence. It's a fantastic resource we have on campus for faculty. And I guess grad students too. Y'all do some things with TAs.
Yes, we do.
Yeah,
TA
so that's
training.
pretty
Yep,
cool.
Yep.
So just to get started, tell us about how you came to SAM.
Okay, so I grew up in a pretty small town in Texas, and then I went to a really gigantic university, Texas A&M.
Oh, you did?
And that was a bit of a shock, but it was great. It was a good experience. I enjoyed it there. And then God really took care of me. I got into a really highly respected biomedical science program, Baylor College of Medicine in Houston. And I did my PhD there. And I thought, okay, I'm going to do biomedical research. This is my thing. And then I kind of redirected a little towards much more of a teaching focus over time.
While you were there?
No, afterward.
Afterward, okay.
Well, I had a little bit of experience there,
Okay.
but really experiences across time brought me this direction, a whole lot of them. And then my first faculty job was actually at UTEP, and then the position came open here, and we just liked it a lot.
Yeah.
My wife likes this area a lot, and so came here. I've been here ever since 2005, and it's been great here.
Yeah. So from 2005, I got here in 2004, so just 1 year ahead of you. So we're kind of classmates.
Yeah,
if
come
you
up
will.
together. Yeah.
Did you have a question or
No.
Okay. Yeah. So did you have during this time period a spiritual mentor or anyone that helped you in the faith growing up?
Yeah, a variety of different people. I think my big lesson from that was students don't panic if you don't know what you're going to do yet.
Oh, fantastic.
Right? You think
I know,
you think you have to have it all figured out, and every time I thought I had it figured out, usually there was a wrinkle along the way. God really directed me, because I thought for sure med school, and then no, for sure research, and then for sure, and then here I am doing a lot of teaching stuff, which I love, and nothing I'd rather do more. So he'll redirect you when you need it. I think you come up with a plan, and you do the best you can, but God will redirect you when you want. So don't stress about, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do with my life.
Yeah.
It's
That's comforting. I know. I wish Gabby were here because she's just right now saying, I don't know what I want to major in. She's changed 2 or 3 times, and so we'll have to get with her. So do you tie this idea of mentoring and relaxing in terms of what the future may hold? How do you tie that in to? I know you're director of Crew, so can you tell us a little bit about Crew, and do you tie that comfort for students into Crew?
Yeah.
How's that linked?
So when I was at A&M, actually there was a girl. A lot of stories start that way.
That's right.
She was in Crew. At that point, we called it Campus Crusade for Christ, the full name. And I was like, that sounds like a good group.
Yeah.
I was a Christian, so I was like, that sounds like a good group. They sound like they're cool, but I never really went because, again, that place is so big.
Right.
And when you're, pretty
How many people would be at a Crew meeting at A&M at that time?
800.
Oh, wow. Yeah, 800.
And A&M itself, you're talking about 42,000 students. So
Right.
a lot of times, I could be in the football stadium with 70,000 people and feel alone. Because I'm from a little town, I'm very introverted.
Right.
So, but anyway, she was like, "This is great, it's good stuff," and I was like, "Okay, well, I'll go try it." So I went to a winter conference that they have in Dallas, really awesome, and I just saw that, connected really well, and some of the guys at A&M connected with them who were in Crew, and then went back and joined Crew and got involved there, and so that was a huge effect on me. So when Crew came here, when it was brought here by a staff person, Jennifer Bella, I was like, that's just really important. I need to help her out. And it just kind of grew over time. A little more help, a little more help, a little more help, just kept growing in. when I was at A&M, a major mentor I had there was Ellie Perez. He was on staff with Crew.
Okay.
He led our guys' Bible study,
Mm-hmm.
and then we would all lead Bible studies for freshmen.
Okay.
Kind of a discipleship model there. And I just like, because I was kind of terrified of evangelism, I have to go talk to this person I don't know about Jesus, and that was just like the scariest thing.
Right.
And he just took some of his guys, and we'd go to the student center there,
Mm-hmm.
and we just talked to them. And
Yeah.
I figured out, okay, somebody says, I'm not interested. Nobody died. It's not that big of a deal, Or sometimes it'd be like, tell me a little more, and then you could tell them. And so he really kind of demystified that for me, and was really patient, about that. And so I really learned you can disciple other people. It's not like magic. It's not for special super Christians.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all called to do that, right? It's a great commission. We're all called to do it, so we all can do it, and you can do it. And, you just hang out with them, you spend some time with them, someone who's less mature than you, and you just help bring them along. You read the Word with them, you pray with them, and so he was very authentic.
Right.
Didn't pretend to be a perfect guy.
So just modeled it for you. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's kind of what's in the back of my head when I'm interacting with students here with Crew. Is I don't have to be perfect.
Right.
I need to do the best I can, help bring them along, encourage them, and
Yeah, and Gabby brought that up too. She talked about mission trips and evangelism, and really just emphasizing the relationships of it. It sounds like that's what this fellow did.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's good for any organization. It's not just a Christian thing, but I think Christians get into that a lot because we're encouraged to make relationships and not just isolate ourselves.
Right.
And so, I've seen actually this idea of not isolating yourself be reflected in your work through PACE. And so like the new faculty that come in, they're sort of, if they want to be, they can be set up with a mentor. And again, it builds those relationships on campus and helps them have a place for community.
Yeah, a lot more community.
Yeah.
Because they're spending a lot of time here, they're working hard, and they're a lot happier if they feel part of the community.
Absolutely. So the interview really can go many different directions from here. And so I've thought of some ideas that I know that just because we're friends, you're in science, okay, so we can talk about science.
Yep.
You have a big family, and we could talk about families, big families. What's that like? We could talk about cancer, okay, how you deal with bad news and things, and prayer. So which one of those kind of lights you up? And
They're all big.
Yeah.
Right? And I do, of course, get asked all the time, as I'm sure you do, about science, and
And so if that one's beat to death, we can do one of the others.
There's a bit of a mythology in our
Yeah.
culture that science is against Christianity. And one thing of mine is I really don't want Christians to be science phobic.
Okay, good. That was actually my question. I said, okay, if you wanted to talk about it, I'd say, what would you say to Christians who are fearful of science?
Yeah, I don't want them to think that science is out to get them or out to just, there are people who treat it that way.
Mm-hmm.
They're more using science as a weapon to try to attack other worldviews.
Mm-hmm.
But science itself isn't like that. Well, science is just analysis of the natural world and search for truth in the natural world, a systematic way to do that.
Right.
When you talk about really important philosophical issues, love, morality, truth, science doesn't really, you can't measure, there's not a level-meter, you can't measure, you can't run an experiment on it. So science shouldn't be doing those things. To put it bluntly, a lot of people think if evolution is true, then that shows life appeared and nobody was involved and you don't need any God. That's silly.
It doesn't follow.
Because evolution doesn't say that, can't say that, it would never say that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a science theory about how you get different species.
Right.
It can't go beyond science and say, and God wasn't involved. Because God could be involved in some way that you can't detect or measure, or so it doesn't really do that. So
yeah, I've always been bothered by this word unguided, because show me the guidometer.
Yeah, you can't.
There's no guidometer.
You can't.
You can't.
Yeah.
You could say I haven't detected the finger of God or anything, but that's different than saying it's not there. You don't have this guidance meter. There'd be no way to tell.
Right. So I just don't want them to be put off that, or think they can't do science, or think science is against them, or something like that, because that's not really true. And you look at, you come out of our very recent, say 20 years now, fairly postmodernist Western civilization viewpoint, and you take a large historical viewpoint, you're really open-minded. You see that the early scientists, they didn't have that viewpoint at all.
Right.
Newton, Pascal,
right.
Mendel, they're all also
Pascal's
known
writings
for
are fantastic.
very strong believers who wrote
Yes.
Christian writings. So they weren't doing science to attack
Right.
Christianity or God. They were doing it because to them, God made the natural world. I want to understand the natural world. I'm doing God's work.
Yes.
So I just hate to see this false, unnecessary rift appearing.
I hate it too, as far as this unnecessary battle. But let's take the same question. What would you say to Christians who are afraid of science? There are scientists out there who are afraid of Christians. What would you say to the scientist who is worried about Christianity? I mean, some of them will use the word dangerous. I think they want to do that because we want the world to be safe. And so if they can label faith, specifically Christian faith, as dangerous, then they have a lever to push back on.
And being historically honest, I can see why some of them would say that. If you look at some things in the past where people who claim to be Christian did some terrible things,
Okay.
I can see why they would say that. And I understand where they're coming from. So I wouldn't think that they're like
Just making stuff up. Right.
That is a good thing to think about. So I would try to get to a deeper conversation with them about, well, what are you saying here? Are you saying that, this, going to another country and trying to force them to believe something is wrong? Okay. How do you know that's wrong? I know it's wrong. Jesus says that's wrong. People who did the Crusades, they weren't doing what Jesus said. They were doing completely different from what he said. I know that's wrong. If there's no God, how do you know that that's actually wrong?
So a
universally for everybody.
Yeah.
You get a deeper conversation of, I understand why you're concerned about this certain event. I'm concerned about it too.
Right.
But I get clear guidance on what you should be doing, and Jesus tells me, first of all, love others. That's not loving and try to force them to do something.
Right.
So I know that's wrong. How do you know that? Because actually you really agree with. You don't disagree with Jesus. You agree with him.
Yeah, that's right.
Maybe you should
unpack that. Yeah.
Maybe you should look at him a little more closely. You actually agree. Jesus said clearly as can possibly be, hypocrisy is really wrong, multiple times. So you agree with him if you think people are hypocritical.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's bad. So why don't you take a closer look at it?
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, this is an open invitation to any of y'all and anyone out there who watches this later. As scientists, we welcome these conversations. So we want to have deeper conversations with people, not shallower. And so this is an open invitation for people to interact with us online. Call us, get a hold of us.
One reason why I'm a scientist is because, I want to know the truth. And I want to, look at evidence for the truth.
Right.
I don't want to believe Christianity because it's nice, or my parents do.
Okay.
About the second year in college is when, and I grew up in a, parents are Southern Baptists. They're great. They're awesome. I love them. So I grew up really in the church, and I saw a mixture of people who were very authentic and people who were very fake and very hypocritical and judgmental and negative and legalistic. And so about second year in college is when I remember just sitting down and do I really believe this?
Yeah.
Do I really, I don't want to just do this because this is what people do.
Right. Or mom and dad did.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
It's just, creating the whole world, animals on an ark, guy coming back from the dead.
Yeah.
Do I really believe that? That sounds kind of crazy. Do I believe that? And so I struggled a bit, and which is okay.
Yeah.
You should struggle when you're searching for the truth. And actually, I found a book I learn a lot with reading, so that worked for me.
Good.
Evidence that Demands a Verdict.
Oh, okay.
Josh McDowell.
Yeah, good book.
Josh McDowell, I found out later, actually works for Crew. God's funny, Crew connects me in lots of ways. But I started looking at this book, and I started praying, and I looked at it, and I was like, okay, and Josh himself was an atheist who investigated and tried to disprove Christianity and found so much evidence that he wrote a series of books. And I was, wow, okay.
Yes.
There's a lot of evidence for this. Historical, archaeology, moral arguments, philosophical. There's lots of, this isn't just some crazy idea, it's Easter Bunny kind of stuff.
Right.
There's a lot of evidence for this. And so I decided, well, I believe Christianity because it's actually true.
Yeah, not
it's
just
real.
Mom and Dad.
It's true.
Yeah.
And so that really made a difference to me. And that's one reason why our firstborn son is named Joshua. Because that was a real impact for me. Josh McDowell. Still doing ministry for Crew today, still out there.
I know, it's amazing. I heard him speak last October at the National Conference for Christian Apologetics. It was fantastic. And then his son, Sean McDowell.
Sean is doing a fantastic job.
And I'm taking what Sean told on one of the podcasts I listened to had such an impact on me because his dad's Mr. Apologist, wrote the book on Evidence That Demands a Verdict. And Sean, his son, came to him one day and said, Dad, I'm not so sure I believe this. I'm struggling. And this is the guy's own son.
Yeah.
Have you not read my books? Come on. How can you possibly have any doubts? He didn't say that. Josh said, look, son, you seek the truth. He was so comfortable in the truth. He's like, this is my advice for you. You seek the truth. Don't seek what's comfortable. Don't seek what your friends are telling you is the truth.
Don't do what your dad believes.
Yeah. Don't just take it on as my faith that you got by heredity. Or acculturation. And to me, that was so wonderful that he had that response instead of just saying, it's because I said so. I've done the research. You don't need to do that. Yeah, that was really very good, I thought. So now Sean has gone on to graduate school and wrote his thesis on what happened to the disciples after the crucifixion. And, they were scattered all around. And I thought that was a fascinating dissertation topic. And as soon as I heard that his dissertation was available in PDF format, I ran out there and I grabbed it. I haven't read through it yet, but it goes through all of the apostles or the disciples and sees sort of what church tradition and historical documentation there is for what happened to all of them.
You know that out?
Yeah, and I just skimmed through it. It's fascinating,
Yeah, Sean did the D Now at Fellowship this last weekend.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was here in town.
Oh man, that's fantastic. I wish I'd known. Yeah.
So, I guess a big thing, probably one of the biggest things I learned in Crew in college was that if I want to pursue Jesus, which is completely against the flow, both as an individual and the community around me, being actively involved in a ministry, a community of faith, will dramatically increase your pursuit of Jesus.
Yeah, that's true.
You try to just go alone, or you try to back burner it, you're going to get creamed.
Yeah, and I know that was one of the best analogies I ever heard in a sermon. It was about people that think, well, I can be just a Christian isolated, away from the church, or away from a body of believers, or any kind of fellowship. And it was like a charcoal. He said, you take one briquette out of the charcoal grill and set it over by itself, and it loses the warmth of the community, and it just cools off fast.
Yeah, it also just defeats the whole purpose of the charcoal.
That's right.
I mean, I discovered at some point that I have my best sort of Bible study / devotions when I'm engaged.
Right.
Because it means something to me.
That's right.
So there's no such thing, for me at least, to spending, say, the summer just reading my Bible.
Right.
Because that begins to be uninteresting. I tend to be forced into Bible study, devotions, worship, because of people around me.
Yes.
And at some point I picked up some artificial understanding that you sort of did one, then you did the other.
Yeah.
I know for me, they're all linked.
That's good. And I find that too, that I'm sure I think my own thoughts and I essentially talk to myself in my head and rationalize things and so on, but it's when I get together with other Christians and non-Christians, that my thoughts are all mixed up and I can resort them and understand the world a lot better. I had dying to talk about family, okay? Because 50 years ago, Paul Ehrlich published his book, Population Bomb, okay, predicting mass starvation and so on in the 70s and 80s and so on. Well, that didn't happen. No. But yet those thoughts are still kind of stuck in our collective psyche that, we don't want to have too many kids. There's an overpopulation and everything like that. And you have a large family. So I wanted to ask you about what's it like having a large family?
How many kids do you have?
5. So I'd like to...
Without too much detail,
I'd like to say I
we don't
planned
put
it, but I
anybody-
didn't really plan it. God kind of planned it. And, in fact, funny story, when we only had Joshua, at one point we went to a doctor, and he actually told us, just go ahead and accept it's unlikely you're going to have any more children.
Okay.
Did a few tests and told us that.
Yeah.
So, which was tough on,
Sure.
quite tough on my wife.
It's always tough.
Tougher on her than me. And, but I sent that, like, 12 years later, I sent him a picture of our family. Kind of
Yeah,
a
that's-
little for it. Hey, maybe you shouldn't
That's
predict
right.
that. But, God knew what he was doing
Sure.
when he brought these children to us. And, of course, there's nothing like family. It's really great. It's just, it is my life now. It's like, the children and watching them grow and seeing them go and do things. And from the Christian viewpoint, these are your ultimate disciples because you have them for such a long period of time.
Yes.
You can do so much molding in their life, and then watching them go out and, and we're at the stage now where we're kind of the, letting go, maturing state. We've been investing a whole lot.
Sure.
Now they're teenagers and getting into 20s, and now it's kind of like, okay, it's time to back off. Let them go. Let them struggle. Let them do their things. Let them be an adult. And then, so I'm kind of transitioning now to the more friend advisor role, and that's really, really different.
I'm sure it's
but exciting.
It's
and
exciting
fun.
too.
Each different role is great.
Right.
I mean, when they're babies, they're babies. They're cute.
Sure.
And when the girls are 3 years old, Daddy's the coolest thing in the universe.
That's always nice.
You know everything. and, it's fun.
Yeah.
And it's very different when they're 16. And you tell them something. That's a very different response than when they're 3. But every different stage is great. And
I felt that way too. I thought every age, this is the best.
yeah,
It's
great. I think what's the coolest thing for me, myself, is really understand a lot better God.
Really?
How does he feel? What is it, so my children are ignoring me, or a lot of things that my children do, then I do that with God.
Oh,
I don't listen to him. I'm mad when I do something he told me not to do and it goes badly. I'm like, what? Why would I be mad at him? He told me not to do it and I did it. And, same thing. I do the same thing. Everything my kids do that annoys me,
You do to God.
I do to God all the time. So I really understand parentally a lot more my view of God and how really, he's so incredibly, I wouldn't be patient. If I was God, I'd have wiped off the world a long time ago. Because we basically give God the finger all the time. We're really obnoxiously rebellious to Him. And He's just so patient at trying to reach us. And so, that kind of fathering. So it really lets me, I think, understand a teeny bit how He feels about it.
Wow.
In a related way, I agree very much, but my view of God changed after I became a parent because, I'll phrase it as a question, is there anything your children can do where you would reject them and say, you're not my child anymore?
Not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
Yeah. And that was the first time I really understood, that even though I knew I wasn't supposed to be always negotiating to make God happy, that if God loved me like I love my children, then there wasn't an issue.
Right.
You know, there's no issue as to whether or not my children are my children. Now, whether or not they're growing healthy or
Right.
in pain, that's different.
Yes.
Right.
But they're always going to be my children, and that gave me a more deeper understanding of God's love for me. He may be frustrated with me
Sure.
from time to time, but
Right.
I'm still his
Yeah.
son.
Right.
Yes.
And that can't be undone.
Yeah.
And just like I want their motivation not to be a fear of my punishment,
Right.
but I want their motivation to be a fear of my disappointment. You know, I want my kids to do the right thing because they appreciate what I want for them.
Right, and some of it,
And that sinks in then to me and my behavior. I'm not trying to obey God's law and His word because I'm afraid of a fly swatter in the sky. It's going to whack me.
Yeah.
You know, I want to honor Him. I want to love Him back. And I want to do the things that He thinks are holy and important.
Yeah, to me, that mindset of like being afraid of God for His punishment really falls short when you become saved.
Yeah.
Because then that's the only reason that you were ever afraid of Him or had a healthy fear of Him, then keep on sinning so grace may abound. But no, Paul says don't do that because of our love for God, and why would you do that? Because of what He's done for you. So it's like a fear of being disappointed, and basically, like you just said, like it's like the way you look at your Father.
And the most beautiful words that could be said are, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." You know, that's essentially God's glory, approval of you if you've done everything you can to be faithful to Him after you've trusted Him to, reparative relationship through Christ.
And really, that's a good analogy as well, because I know in my personal life, one of the only times that have actually affected me was when I felt like I disappointed my father or my parents.
Yeah.
More than any time I was in trouble with them was the moment whenever I heard my dad say that he was disappointed in an action I did.
Yeah.
Hurt me more than anything else.
Me too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can remember specifically examples where that was the word. You have disappointed me so much, and I mean, just so painful. I was like, just give me a spanking.
I would much rather
Please,
spank
just but spanking I can handle. Yeah. So that's fantastic. Also, I never really felt like I could love another person as much as when I had kids. There was just nothing in my life experience that would prepare me for that. Just the protective feelings that I felt. Katie was our first, and so just the idea of anything happening to her or anybody, targeting her for any manner of ill treatment, oh my gosh, I could easily become homicidal. And I never ever had those feelings. I was like, where'd this come from? This is a depth of love and protection that I was feeling now for my children that I never ever even conceived of.
So, what happens then? Things are threatened. I don't, like I said, this is a interview with you. I don't want to go into too many details, but what do you do with the bad news like cancer? This is in your family now. And it's like, what happened? Here.
Yeah, it's pretty challenging when this oncologist tells you your wife has stage 3 synovial sarcoma, this rare, and being the scientist, you go look up a few studies and you see the survival rates are
I know. I had the same thing with my
terrible.
brother-in-law. And my sister gave me the news, and I did a few internet searches, and I didn't go to Wikipedia this time. I went to PubMed, and pulled the article. I can read a scientific paper.
I had to stop pretty fast because they were fierce, and that was really a tough spot.
How long ago?
That was only about a year and a half ago. So, God was always taking care of us, of course. She went to MD Anderson, world expert on her super rare thing was there. So she really got the best treatment in the world. I mean, the treatment that kings and people like that
Nowhere
used
else
to get
in
in
the
the
world
past.
anybody could get.
So fantastic, and her 6-month checkup was a few weeks ago, and no evidence of disease, so
That's
stuff
wonderful.
looks great. And so, but it was really, I think the toughest part is watching her struggle so much,
Right.
She's taking chemo, and it's just, that's tough. That's tougher than, I'm
Yeah.
the same thing about you, okay, just give me some. Don't,
Yeah.
stop it to her. I can't take,
Can't take this.
and that was tough.
Yeah.
But
Mm.
she responded super well,
Yeah.
She's had a period, a number of years ago, she had some difficulties and really got deep in the Word. And I
Okay.
think because of that preparation,
Yeah.
she responded really well to this.
It's
And-
like a taproot in a storm.
and she was
Yeah.
strong, and she used it she saw it as an opportunity pretty early,
Mm-hmm.
and through Facebook and other things, she would update people and let everybody know, and
Right.
and not just to know about her, but really to her, this is a chance to let people know God is real, because
Mhm.
someone who faces basically possibility of severely painful death is going to stick with Jesus the whole way, and
Right.
so she really used it, and I think a lot of people were touched, and that was awesome to see.
Yes.
And and I had to, I guess it was maybe a week or two after we got the diagnosis, I had to just basically sit down and okay, and just let go, just be like, okay,
Wherever this leads.
maybe you're going to kill my life, God,
Yeah. Yeah.
or let her die, and
Yeah.
and
There aren't any guarantees.
No,
that was
it's not.
tough.
And
It's
that's-
tough to even say that, but it was really tough to just actually mean, okay, if you want to kill her, you know what you're doing.
Mhm.
Once I did that, everything was much easier.
Interesting.
It just had to get to the point of, okay,
Yeah.
you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know what you're doing, and I trust you.
I don't know what you're doing. And it was tough. I don't like what you're doing. But
Yeah.
that was a bit of a release. And then really we just kind of together just
Right.
traveled through it, using it as an opportunity. There was a really cool sermon,
Mm.
actually by John Piper, who was basically saying, don't waste your cancer,
Interesting.
Don't waste it. This is yes, it's a really hard thing, but it's also an opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
because nobody can really argue with you when you're
Yeah.
facing something like that and you're still praising God and talking about Jesus and everything. It's pretty hard to argue with that. But
You become an impossible person. And
Yeah.
I think, I forget who it was talking about that. It said Christians ought to be impossible people. That there should be joy when there shouldn't be.
yeah, and she was that.
Yeah.
And I was never been prouder of her. And it was
Mhm.
really, she reached a lot of people, and
But the falsity of this whole prosperity gospel
Yeah.
thing that's sort of just, it's sort of soaked into the fabric, at least in the
Yeah.
southern United States. I don't know if it's nationwide, but in all of my areas here, you see that message of if you're pleasing God, then your material wealth is going to increase, your health is going to be
Yeah.
good, all of these things. You can pluck a Bible verse out of context, and you do that with
Yeah.
lots of them. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all
Right.
these things will be added to you. Does that mean you're going to have a nice car? Or
we had a
super health and
small bit of that happen where people would come to her or me and talk
Mhm.
about, maybe we did something wrong,
Mhm.
or well, if you just have more faith, God will heal you, kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
again, she did well with that. She didn't blow up on her or
Yeah.
anything.
Either of you follow Kate Bowler? She's a New York Times writer. She's a Duke professor, did a dissertation. Fairly outspoken Christian, did a dissertation on the name it, claim it,
Okay.
prosperity gospel.
Mhm.
All right, and then a couple of years ago got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer of some type, terminal cancer.
Mhm.
And continues to write. And she's one of our first articles in the New York Times, where she said, some people are going to point out how ironic it is that I wrote my dissertation on the prosperity gospel,
Yeah.
and now I have cancer.
Yeah.
And, again, the prosperity people are going to say, you just need to trust God.
Yeah.
But she's written about that. She and her husband have a daughter that's,
Yeah.
I'm going to say 4 or 5. Anyway, I read it a couple of years ago, and she's still writing, so she's still
Kate?
survived it. Bowler, Kate Bowler,
EOWLER. Okay.
and a bunch of articles in the New York
Yeah.
Times.
That's fantastic.
And one of them fairly recently.
Okay.
You know,
Yes.
but I mean, she's doing some type of experimental
Mhm.
thing that seemed to have put things on hold.
Put it at bay.
But the diagnosis, my understanding is it's fatal.
It's
It's just that instead of
Yes.
dying in the first year, she's still alive.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's.
Well,
I think it's one of the maybe the toughest thing you have to accept.
Yeah.
Yes.
She talked
Is
about
that
her
God is
Christian
God.
have-
And he really do anything with you he wants.
Right.
yes.
But, really, that's how the universe should run. That's how you want it to run.
Mhm.
Someone who is morally flawless,
Right.
someone who's already demonstrated that he's willing to do anything to help us and care for us.
Mhm. He knows what death
Coming as
feels like.
Jesus,
Yeah.
and he doesn't exempt himself from pain, even though he has the right to.
Yes.
That's who you want in charge of the universe,
Mm.
not me. I'm an idiot.
Not me either.
It'd be a disaster. So, although it's difficult to really accept that on the deepest level, of
Yeah.
God can do God could, take my child. Something like that is
Yes.
very hard to
Yes.
accept. God can do that, and He knows what He's doing. That's really hard. But although once you get there, I think your
Mhm.
relationship with God then moves to a completely different level.
It really does.
There's kind of a funny story that I've heard numerous times about taking scriptures out of context. Guys looking, trying to say, God, tell me what to do in my
Yeah.
life. So I'm going to go through a
Yeah,
Bible
yeah.
verse. First one he picks out is, and Judas killed himself. He says, okay, I'm not going to do that. Let's go to the next one. The next
Okay.
one is, this is the word of the Lord. You will follow it.
Just flipping through and like picking random verses. Yeah, yeah, that's not the best way
Not a
to
good
do a
strategy.
Bible study. That's right. I'm gonna flip it open and put my finger on a verse. Yeah, I've heard people talking about that though. Now I'm sure through all this, this will be my last little topic. Is through all of this, prayer was important. I'm sure. I know in our dealing with my brother-in-law Ken, that was prayer was a big thing as well for personal comfort and so on.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's several people that probably tune in to have no idea what prayer is. So, do you have a good idea? I mean, how could you explain what prayer is to someone who really doesn't get it?
That probably was the one really clear, gigantic benefit of this experience. Our prayer lives were deeper, and tons of people were praying a lot more than they used to when we faced, because a lot of times we live in this fake zone that everything's okay.
Yeah.
But when something like this happens, you see the reality that we desperately need God all the time. And even if you don't have cancer, you desperately need God. And so that was a huge benefit. And the way prayer is really conversation, prayer is close conversation with God, a personal level of conversation with God. And it's not a formula. It's
Right.
not it's like talking to my wife. Our conversation is in many different flavors, many different styles. When you're up, when you're down, when all sorts of
Yes,
stuff.
right.
And when you look at, Psalm, God putting Psalms in the Bible, these personal reflections, a lot of them of David, why would he put that in the Bible for people to read for centuries? This personal reflection of this one guy, and some of them he's way up, some of them he's way down, and
Some of them he's ticked off.
some of them he is mad as you can get.
Yeah.
And before I read that,
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say, "Oh, you don't say something like that to God."
Mhm.
But then once I read it, I realized just
Yeah.
honesty
Mhm.
and authentic conversation with
Right.
God, and you let Him know, "Hey, why did you let that happen? I don't like why did
that,
you do
yeah.
that?
Yeah.
I don't like that, God. That's not fair." But then the conversation can get you to the point where you realize, you don't run fair in the universe.
That's
You don't
right.
know the first thing about,
Yeah.
fair is I go to hell forever.
Yeah.
So I don't want fair from God. I want what He does. And so you really, it's this authentic, running, close conversation with a person. It's not a formula. It's
Yeah.
It's not check off list. It's
Mhm.
not,
Yeah.
it's not this holy magic thing over here.
Right.
It's this running conversation with your Father all the time about
Yes.
everything.
About everything. And sometimes just the shortest prayer can be the most helpful. And Greg Kokel, we're going to the Rethink next week with Greg Kokel and crew.
Right.
His shortest prayer that he prays the most times is just God knows. He's upset about something when he's scared about something, when he's frustrated or
Yeah.
even happy, God knows. And that prayer gets me through quite a bit as well. For a book on prayer that I found really helpful is Philip Yancey's book on prayer, because it does kind of demystify prayer quite a bit. So if you're curious about that, that's a good one. Well,
I also found this artist named Jason Gray.
okay.
And really just listened to a lot. He's struggled a lot in his life. He struggles a lot with speech issues and things like that. But he can sing.
Okay, excellent.
And he's had some other difficult things. And his music is just this beautiful, honesty about struggles and things. And I just found it to be nice, encouraging. Listen to that, and also pray a lot. And I hope I don't stop all that prayer now that my wife appears to be better so far. And so, but yeah, it just got a lot deeper, and that was a great benefit, out of that experience.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for the interview.
Yeah, great.
And it's been fantastic.
Happy, great to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Any final questions or thoughts, reactions? All right, fantastic. Well, thanks again.
Great.